The sun was dipping low behind the distant hills of the terraformed plains, painting the sky in streaks of amber and rose. Elias, a cowboy of the new frontier, guided his old hover rider along the narrow path by the river. The water shimmered in the fading light, flowing gently over smooth stones, carrying reflections of the clouds above. It was the kind of quiet evening that made even a man used to the wild edges of space pause to watch. Elias was tall and lean, with a weathered hat that had seen too many suns and too many storms. His eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the riverbank for signs of life. He had been riding alone for days, surveying the area for any stragglers who might wander near the colony. But tonight, something unusual caught his attention, a movement among the reeds, subtle and deliberate. At first, he thought it might be one of the small herbivores native to the planet. But as he approached, he saw the figure more clearly. She was a woman, sitting by the river. Her head bowed as she ran her fingers through the water. Her hair was long and dark, catching the last rays of sunlight, and her posture was calm but tense, like someone wary of their surroundings. Then Elias noticed the most striking thing. Her dress was ripped. The fabric hung unevenly, torn in several places, but she did not seem panicked. Instead, she worked quietly, as if she were used to handling difficulties without alarm. Elias's first instinct was to keep his distance. The frontier could be dangerous, even in places that seemed peaceful. But curiosity, stronger than caution, urged him forward. He slowed his hover rider, dismounted, and approached along the riverbank, careful not to make sudden movements. "Evening," he called softly, tipping his hat. The woman looked up, her eyes dark and steady. She did not startle or run. Instead, she observed him for a long moment, measuring his intentions. Finally, she spoke, her voice calm and clear. "Evening," she replied. Elias gave a small nod, glancing at her torn dress. "Looks like you had a rough day. Need some help?" She shook her head gently, though a faint smile tugged at her lips. "No, I can manage, thank you." Elias hesitated. Something about her presence felt different. There was a strength in her posture, a confidence that suggested she was no ordinary traveler. "I'm Elias," he said. "I ride this stretch of the river sometimes. What's your name?" "Nayeli," she said simply, her eyes returning to the water. "I've been exploring." "Exploring?" Elias repeated. He glanced around at the serene landscape, rolling hills, whispering grasses, and the calm river. But he sensed there was more to her story. "Yes," Nayeli said. "The forest upstream. It's unusual." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I've been studying it." Elias's curiosity deepened. The planet was still new to human settlers, and its forests and rivers often held strange surprises. "Unusual how?" he asked. Nayeli lifted her hand slightly, letting the torn edges of her dress catch the sunlight. "It's alive in ways most people wouldn't expect. Not like animals. Not like plants. Something else." Elias squatted down on a flat stone, careful to keep a respectful distance. He had spent years navigating unfamiliar worlds, and he had learned that rushing into things could cause more trouble than good. "Alive in ways you can't see?" he asked. Nayeli nodded. "Yes. Things move differently. They respond to you. They notice you." She hesitated, then added, "My dress. It was torn by them, I think. But not in anger. Just contact. Claned. 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 Claned." Elias frowned. He had encountered many strange things in his time: glowing insects, floating rocks, plants that sang with the wind, but the idea of a forest interacting with a person in such a way was new. Still, he felt no fear, only fascination. "That's interesting," he said slowly. "Not dangerous?" Nayeli shook her head. "No, not dangerous. Just different." I wanted to understand it better. Elias studied her for a moment. There was a calmness about her that contrasted sharply with the uncertainty of the frontier. He admired that. Well, you've got the right place to explore. The river's quiet tonight. You want company while you study it? Nayeli looked at him, her eyes thoughtful. After a pause, she nodded. Perhaps. It's better not to be alone sometimes. Elias smiled slightly. I agree. I'm no scholar, but I know how to watch. Maybe between the two of us, we can figure out what's going on. They walked slowly along the riverbank, the soft sound of water under the twilight sky guiding them. Nayeli pointed out strange plants with glowing veins, curious rocks that seemed to hum faintly when touched, and patches of moss that pulsed as if they had a heartbeat. Elias listened carefully, noting everything, his mind alive with possibilities. This was not just another walk along the river, it was a first step into a mystery that might reveal something entirely new about the planet. At one point, Nayeli crouched beside a patch of moss that shimmered with soft light. See this? She asked. It reacts when I place my hand on it. Not like a sensor, not like a machine. It's aware. Elias knelt beside her, reaching out cautiously. As his hand touched the moss, he felt a faint warmth, a gentle pulse that seemed almost like a heartbeat. He looked at Nayeli in surprise. Remarkable, he whispered. She nodded. It's alive. Not dangerous. Just different. This is why I explore. To learn. Trines 1. To learn. The sun had nearly disappeared, leaving the sky in shades of deep violet. Stars began to appear, twinkling faintly in the evening sky. Elias and Nayeli continued walking along the river, exchanging thoughts quietly, each amazed by the other's perspective. For Elias, the night was no longer just a quiet stretch of river. It was a place of discovery. And for Nayeli, the presence of another human did not frighten her but offered a new way to understand the world around her. As darkness settled, Elias set up a small, portable light near a flat patch of ground. He motioned to Nayeli to sit. We should rest soon, he said gently. The forest will still be here in the morning. Nayeli smiled faintly. Thank you, Elias. For not running away, he chuckled softly. Not my style. Besides, this place deserves respect. And it seems to have chosen you for a reason. They sat by the river, listening to the gentle flow of water, the whisper of wind through the trees, and the soft pulse of the glowing moss. Neither spoke for a while, letting the peaceful night settle over them. For the first time in days, Elias felt a calm he had not known on the frontier. The mystery of Nayeli, her torn dress, and the living forest filled his mind with questions and with a sense of anticipation. Something extraordinary was beginning, and he knew it would change everything he thought he knew about the world. As they watched the stars reflect in the river, Elias realized that this encounter was not just chance. It was the start of a journey, one that required patience, respect, and curiosity. And somehow, he felt sure that humanity, with all its ingenuity and adaptability, could rise to meet whatever the forest held. The next morning, the sky was painted with pale gold and soft pink. Mist hovered above the river, and dew sparkled on the grass, reflecting the first light of day. Elias woke before the sun fully rose, stretching his arms and feeling the cool air on his face. The night had been calm, and the river's gentle song still echoed in his mind. Nayeli was already awake, kneeling beside the river with a small notebook in hand. She was sketching patterns she had seen in the moss and glowing plants from the night before. The torn edges of her dress had been patched with a few strands of cloth she had in her pack. But the faint light from the forest had left subtle glowing streaks on the fabric, as if it had remembered the touch of the plants. Elias watched her quietly. There was a quiet intensity in Nayeli, a focus that spoke of years of training and observation. She did not notice him at first, absorbed in the patterns and textures she had encountered. Finally, she looked up and smiled. "Morning," she said. "Did you sleep well?" Better than I expected, Elias replied, moving closer. You? Fine, she said, closing her notebook. But I want to get back into the forest today. I think we can find more. Elias nodded. He had spent enough time on this frontier to know that exploring unknown places required caution, observation, and respect. All right. Lead the way, he said. They walked along the riverbank for a few minutes, the mist curling around their boots and hover rider tracks. Nayeli stopped suddenly and pointed toward a cluster of reeds. Look, she said. Elias squinted. At first, all he could see was the green of the plants and the brown of the wet soil. Then he noticed subtle movements, almost like shadows shifting. Even though the wind was still, small, smooth shapes darted between the reeds, creatures no bigger than his hand, with delicate wings that reflected the sunlight like tiny mirrors. Alive, Elias whispered. Yes, Nayeli said softly. But not like animals we know. They are part of the forest, and yet separate. They watch. They respond. They interact. The tiny creatures paused as they noticed Elias. One hovered closer, tilting its body as if studying him. Elias held still, letting his curiosity show without fear. The creature circled him, then zipped back to the reeds, leaving a trail of faint, shimmering light. Nayeli's eyes lit up. They are guiding us. I think they want us to follow. Elias raised an eyebrow. Guiding us? You mean, intentionally? She nodded. Yes. They don't seem afraid. They are curious. Like we are. He smiled. Humanity had always found ways to adapt and understand new environments. Whether on Earth, the Moon, or the far reaches of space, humans had survived by observing, learning, and cooperating. This was no different. All right, he said. Lead the way. Over. Over. Oh, love of you now. The creatures flitted ahead, hovering just above the ground, moving in a careful line. Elias and Nayeli followed, careful not to disturb the plants around them. The forest grew denser as they moved inland, the trees towering above with leaves that shimmered in shades of green, blue, and faint gold. Light filtered through in scattered beams, illuminating patches of the soft moss below. After a few minutes, they reached a clearing. The air was warmer here, filled with a subtle hum, almost like the vibration of the planet itself. In the center of the clearing was a cluster of rocks covered in luminescent moss, pulsing gently. Nayeli stepped closer, kneeling beside them. These rocks, they respond to presence, she explained. They seem to communicate, in light and vibration. Elias crouched beside her, carefully observing. He reached out, letting his fingers hover above one of the glowing surfaces. A pulse ran through his hand, soft and warm, like the rhythm of a heartbeat. He looked at Nayeli, astonished. Remarkable, he whispered. It's alive, but not like anything we know. Nayeli nodded. Exactly. And it's intelligent. The patterns, the pulses. It's like a language of the forest itself. Elias's mind raced. He had seen many signs of intelligence in humans and machines, but this was different. The forest was alive, aware, and capable of interacting. It was an ecosystem with consciousness, responding to those who approached with respect. Humanity had faced countless challenges in space, from hostile environments to alien worlds, and yet humans had always adapted. Now, he realized, this planet was testing that adaptability in a completely new way. Do you think it can understand us? He asked. I think it can, Nayeli said. But we must be careful. The forest is patient. It will respond if it senses respect, but it will not tolerate harm. Elias nodded, feeling a sense of awe. He had explored strange forests on distant moons and watched alien storms sweep across barren plains. But he had never seen life like this. It was alive not only in body, but in mind, and it had chosen to reveal itself in small, subtle ways. They spent hours in the clearing, observing patterns of light and sound, experimenting with gentle touches on the moss and rocks. The glowing creatures hovered near, watching their interactions, sometimes guiding them toward areas of interest. Each discovery revealed more complexity: small ridges that emitted faint tones when pressed, clusters of moss that pulsed in patterns, and vines that shifted subtly when touched, as if acknowledging their presence. At one point, Elias noticed a faint trail of light leading deeper into the forest. "Look at this," he said. "It's like a path." Nayeli's eyes widened. "Yes, the forest is showing us a route. It wants us to follow." They walked slowly, carefully, keeping their senses alert. The forest seemed to breathe around them, leaves rustling gently, even without wind, shadows shifting in harmony with their movements. Elias felt a deep respect for this place. Humans often saw the universe as something to conquer or control, but here, survival and understanding required patience, observation, and humility. After some time, they reached a small grove. The trees here were taller, their trunks spiraling upward like great columns of silver and green. At the center was a pond, its water clear and still, reflecting the trees and sky above. But the surface of the pond pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat, and tiny lights moved beneath it, as if the water itself were alive. Nayeli knelt at the edge, dipping her hand into the water. The surface rippled, and faint patterns of light formed around her fingers. "It's communicating," she said softly. "Not with words, but with touch, with movement. It wants us to understand." Elias knelt beside her, placing his hand gently in the water. A warmth spread through him, subtle, but unmistakable. The patterns of light shifted as if acknowledging him, responding to his presence and calm intentions. For a moment, he felt as if he were part of the forest itself, connected in a way words could not describe. "This is incredible," he whispered. "It's alive and aware." Nayeli smiled. "Yes, and it's teaching us. Teaching humans that there are ways to survive and understand without force or fear. This is what humans do best: observe, adapt, and learn." Elias looked around, feeling a sense of wonder and responsibility. The forest was not hostile, but it demanded respect. It had shown them small signs, tested their patience, and now allowed them a glimpse of its intelligence. Humanity had faced countless challenges in space, from barren planets to alien storms, and yet humans had always found a way to thrive. Now, in this quiet grove, that same ingenuity and patience were being called upon. As the sun climbed higher, casting golden light through the shimmering leaves, Elias and Nayeli sat beside the pond, observing the pulses and patterns of the living forest. They did not speak much. Words were unnecessary. The forest itself was teaching them, revealing lessons of patience, awareness, and harmony. Elias realized something important. Humans were not the only intelligent life forms capable of thought and communication. The forest, in its quiet, deliberate way, had intelligence too, and if humans could learn to understand and respect it, the possibilities were endless. By midday, they decided to rest. Nayeli spread a small blanket on the soft grass, while Elias unpacked some rations. They ate quietly, still watching the glowing patterns of the pond and the movement of the tiny creatures around them. The forest seemed to acknowledge their presence, and in return, they offered calm observation and respect. As they sat, Elias felt a deep sense of connection not just to the forest, but to Nayeli and to the human capacity for curiosity and resilience. Humanity had always faced the unknown with determination, and here, in the quiet glow of the living forest, that same determination would guide them through the mysteries ahead. The day passed without incident, yet every moment was filled with discovery. By evening, the sun had begun to dip, painting the sky in warm hues. The forest shimmered in response, pulsing gently as if bidding them to continue their journey tomorrow. Elias looked at Nayeli and smiled. "Tomorrow, we go deeper," he said. Nayeli nodded. "Yes, there's more to see. And I think the forest will show us, if we are patient." For the first time in a long while, Elias felt that sense of purpose he had always sought on the frontier. He was not alone. The forest was alive, and humanity's ingenuity, its ability to observe, learn, and adapt, would guide them forward. The mystery of the torn dress, the glowing moss, and the intelligent forest was just beginning. But Elias knew one thing for certain. Humans had what it took to meet the challenges of this living world, and perhaps even thrive in ways no one had imagined. The morning sun rose slowly over the forest, spilling golden light between the tall, shimmering trees. Mist hovered among the trunks, catching the light and creating a soft, glowing haze. Elias stirred first, stretching his arms and looking around at the quiet forest. The previous day's discoveries had filled his mind with wonder, but he also felt a spark of anticipation. Today, he and Nayeli would go deeper into the heart of this strange, intelligent forest. Nayeli was already awake, moving quietly near the pond. She gently touched the water, causing faint pulses of light to ripple across the surface. When she noticed Elias watching, she smiled. "Good morning," she said softly. "The forest is calm today. I think it is ready to show more." Elias nodded, lifting his hat to brush back his hair. "I'm ready. Lead the way." They began walking along the river again, leaving the small clearing behind. The forest around them seemed alive in subtle ways. Leaves shifted slightly when they passed. Soft lights flickered on moss-covered rocks, and small creatures darted through the undergrowth. Elias noticed how attentive Nayeli was to every movement. She pointed out patterns in the light, small changes in the plants, and the faint hum of the ground beneath their feet. "These creatures are not just watching," she explained. "They're communicating with the forest, and with us. If we pay attention, we can understand." Elias glanced at her, impressed. She moved like someone trained not just to observe but to interpret. Humans had always thrived on adaptability and collaboration, and watching Nayeli work reminded him of that strength. After a while, they reached a part of the forest denser than anything they had seen before. The trees here were enormous, their trunks spiraling high and twisting in intricate patterns. Faint pulses of light ran along the bark, like living circuits. The air smelled faintly sweet, with the scent of wet earth and glowing moss. Nayeli knelt beside a patch of glowing moss at the base of one of the largest trees. "This is different," she said. "The forest itself seems to respond more strongly here. We need to be careful, but I think it wants us to continue." Elias crouched beside her, touching the moss lightly. The moment his fingers made contact, the glow intensified, spreading in gentle waves across the forest floor. Tiny creatures hovered around, moving in patterns that seemed to guide their steps. "It's like a map," Elias said. "The forest is showing us a path." "Yes," Nayeli agreed. "But it's not just a path. It's a test. The forest wants to see if we can move carefully, without disturbing it. That's why it has guided us slowly." Elias smiled. Humanity had always faced tests on the frontier: hostile planets, alien storms, or unpredictable wildlife. But this was different. Here, success required patience, respect, and cooperation. Humans had survived for generations by observing and learning from their surroundings. And now that same skill would help them navigate this living world. They followed the glowing trail deeper into the forest. The air grew warmer and more humid, and the hum of life became stronger. Elias noticed that the creatures seemed to respond differently to him and Nayeli together. When they moved as a team, carefully observing and adjusting their actions, the forest pulsed with brighter light and more complex patterns. Nayeli paused and looked at him. "See that?" she said. "When we work together, the forest responds better. It notices cooperation, respect, and understanding. Humans are capable of this. That's why it allows us further." Elias nodded. It was a lesson in human ingenuity and collaboration. Humans had always been able to achieve extraordinary things when they combined observation, intelligence, and teamwork. Now, in this alien forest, those qualities were being recognized by life, unlike any they had encountered before. As they moved through the trees, They discovered plants that shifted when touched, flowers that hummed softly, and vines that formed intricate patterns in response to movement. Nayeli stopped at one particularly fascinating plant, a tall stalk with leaves that reflected light in shifting colors. She placed her hand near it, and the leaves began to move in rhythm with the pulses of the moss on the ground. "The forest is teaching us," she said. "It wants us to notice patterns, to understand rhythm and movement. That is how it communicates." Elias watched and tried to mimic the rhythm, moving his hands slowly to match the pulsing leaves. The plant responded, and a small wave of light ran up the stalk. He felt a thrill of understanding. Humans had always relied on curiosity and adaptability to survive, and here, those same qualities were opening a door to knowledge few had ever imagined. After some time, they reached a small grove. The light here was brighter, the air thicker with the scent of wet earth and blooming plants. At the center was a crystal-clear pond, its surface reflecting the sky and surrounding trees. Tiny pulses of light moved beneath the surface, and the water seemed to respond to their presence. Nayeli knelt beside the pond, dipping her fingers into the water. Patterns of light spread across the surface, forming shapes that seemed deliberate, almost like a language. "The forest is speaking," she whispered. "Not with words, but with movement and touch. It wants us to learn." Elias knelt beside her, placing his hand in the water. A gentle warmth spread through his fingers, and the lights beneath the surface shifted in response. He felt a sense of connection not just to the forest, but to the patterns, the rhythm, and the intelligence within it. "This is amazing," he said quietly. "It's alive, aware, and intelligent. And it's teaching us something important: how to observe, adapt, and respect life that is very different from our own." Nayeli nodded. "Yes, humans have always survived by learning and working together. That same skill is what allows us to communicate with this forest. We are part of it now, if only in understanding and respect." For the next several hours, they experimented with the pond, the moss, and the glowing plants. They discovered that small gestures, careful observation, and teamwork allowed them to interact with the forest in ways they could not have imagined. The creatures guided them. The light patterns formed maps and messages, and the forest responded to their patience and cooperation. Elias began to notice something else. The forest seemed to adapt to their presence. Paths opened where none had existed. Glowing trails guided them forward, and new patterns appeared in the moss and water. The forest was not just intelligent, it was learning from them, as they learned from it. Nayeli looked at him with a smile. "The forest is patient. It does not rush. It tests those who enter it, and rewards those who observe, adapt, and cooperate. That is why humans can succeed here. We are capable of patience, intelligence, and understanding." Elias felt a deep sense of pride and connection. Humanity had always faced challenges, from harsh environments on Earth to the distant worlds of space. Time and again, humans had proven their ability to adapt, to survive, and to thrive. Now, in this alien forest, those same qualities were being recognized in a new form. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, they decided to rest near the pond. Elias unpacked some simple rations, while Nayeli sketched the patterns of light she had observed. They shared their observations, comparing notes and theories about the intelligence of the forest. "You know," Elias said, "humans always find a way. Even in places that seem impossible. Even when the challenges are unlike anything we've seen. That's what this forest is showing us. It recognizes that quality in us." Nayeli nodded. "Yes. And it is teaching us, in return. We must continue to learn, to observe, and to respect. That is how humans thrive, through intelligence, patience, and cooperation." As the evening shadows grew longer, the forest pulsed gently around them. The tiny creatures danced in the air. The moss glowed softly, and the water rippled with faint light. Elias and Nayeli sat quietly, watching the living world unfold. They did not speak much. Words were unnecessary. The forest itself was teaching, and every pulse of light, Every movement of the creatures was part of that lesson. For Elias, the lesson was clear. Humans could rise to meet any challenge, adapt to any environment, and thrive in the most unexpected places. For Nayeli, the lesson was equally clear. Patience, respect, and observation were the keys to understanding life in all its forms. By the time the sun had fully set, painting the sky in deep shades of orange and violet, they felt a sense of accomplishment. They had not conquered the forest, nor had they taken anything from it. Instead, they had learned, cooperated, and observed, and in doing so, earned a place within its rhythm and patterns. Elias looked at Nayeli and smiled. "Tomorrow, we go further," he said. Nayeli's eyes shone with quiet excitement. "Yes, the forest will show us more, if we continue to listen and observe." As they settled down for the night, the forest pulsed gently around them. A living, intelligent presence that had recognized their cooperation, patience, and human ingenuity. And in that moment, both Elias and Nayeli understood that humanity's strength was not just in survival, but in the ability to learn, adapt, and respect the intelligence of the world around them, even in places far beyond Earth. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and glowing moss. Elias stretched and looked around the forest, feeling a strange mix of awe and anticipation. Yesterday's discoveries had opened his mind to the living intelligence around them, and he could sense that today, the forest would reveal something even more extraordinary. Nayeli was already at the pond, sketching the patterns of light she had observed the previous day. Her fingers brushed across the water, and faint pulses of luminescence spread across the surface. She looked up and smiled at Elias. "Good morning," she said. "The forest is ready. Today, we may understand more about how it thinks." Elias nodded. "I'm ready." They began walking along the glowing trails that had appeared the day before. The forest seemed to recognize them immediately, the small creatures darting around in welcoming patterns. The moss glowed brighter under their feet, and the trees shifted slightly as if parting to create a path. Elias felt a deep respect for the forest, sensing that it was alive in ways far beyond ordinary plants or animals. As they moved deeper, the trees became taller, their trunks spiraling in intricate patterns. Soft pulses of light ran along the bark, synchronized with the faint hum of the forest floor. Elias noticed a cluster of vines at the base of one enormous tree, curling in a way that seemed almost deliberate, like fingers forming a gesture. Nayeli knelt beside the tree. "This tree, it's central to the forest's intelligence," she said. "I think it stores memories, patterns, and messages. It watches everything and responds to understanding, not force." Elias reached out, placing his hand on the trunk. A gentle warmth spread through his palm, and faint lights traveled along the bark, forming intricate patterns. He could almost sense the forest's thoughts, subtle and complex, but not chaotic, organized, deliberate, and patient. "It's communicating," he whispered. "Not like a person, but in its own way. It's alive, aware, and intelligent." Nayeli nodded. "Yes, and it wants us to learn. We are not intruders. We are students." They spent hours studying the tree and surrounding plants, experimenting with touch, rhythm, and observation. The creatures flitted around them, hovering in patterns that guided their movements. Each gesture of theirs seemed to elicit a response, the forest teaching them subtle lessons in perception, patience, and understanding. At one point, Elias noticed that the light on Nayeli's patched dress, the streaks from the moss the first night, began to glow more brightly as they approached the tree. It was as if the forest was acknowledging her presence, recognizing that she had interacted with it before. "The forest remembers," Nayeli said quietly. "Not like humans remember, but in patterns and light. It knows who approaches with respect and patience." Elias was amazed. Humanity had always thrived on observation and learning, But this went beyond anything he had experienced. The forest's intelligence was subtle, patient, and cooperative. It responded not to dominance or force, but to curiosity, respect, and understanding. As they continued, Nayeli guided Elias to a small clearing surrounded by luminescent vines and moss-covered stones. In the center was a natural basin filled with crystal-clear water. Tiny lights floated beneath the surface, pulsing in rhythmic patterns that mirrored the glowing plants and creatures around them. "This pond," Nayeli said softly. "It's like the forest's memory. It shows patterns, stories, and responses. Watch carefully." Elias knelt beside her, placing his hand in the water. Immediately, the surface lit up with shifting patterns, forming shapes that seemed almost intentional. Light flowed in curves, circles, and waves, creating a visual language. Elias traced the patterns with his fingers, feeling warmth and pulses that carried meaning, though he could not yet fully understand it. "It's a story," he whispered. "A story of the forest and its life." Nayeli nodded. "Yes. And it wants us to see it. Humans have always told stories, observed nature, and learned from it. Now, the forest is telling its story, and we are the audience and the students." They spent hours interpreting the patterns, observing the pulsing lights, and testing how small gestures affected the responses. Each interaction revealed more about the forest's intelligence and awareness. Elias marveled at the complexity, realizing that humans had a unique ability to adapt and understand even the most alien of environments. "The forest is teaching patience," Nayeli said at one point. "It moves slowly, responds carefully, and expects understanding. That is why humans succeed here. We can observe, adapt, and respect what we do not yet fully understand." Elias thought about humanity's long history, surviving deserts, oceans, storms, and distant planets. Humans had always faced the unknown with intelligence and cooperation. Now, in this living forest, those same qualities were being recognized and rewarded. As the day passed, they discovered more features of the forest's intelligence. Certain rocks emitted gentle tones when touched, coordinating with the glowing plants nearby. Vines formed patterns that shifted when they moved, creating pathways or signals. Even the small creatures seemed to contribute, guiding them subtly toward areas of interest. "This is incredible," Elias said. "The forest isn't just alive. It's aware. It teaches, guides, and responds. Humans have always learned from the environment. But this is something else entirely." Nayeli smiled. "Yes. And it's important that we continue to respect it. This is a partnership, not a conquest. Humans thrive when we work with nature, when we observe and adapt rather than dominate." Elias realized she was right. On countless worlds, humans had survived by using intellect, observation, and cooperation. Here, in a forest alive with intelligence far beyond their previous experiences, those same human qualities were essential. Their success depended not on force, but on understanding and respect. As the sun began to lower in the sky, casting golden light through the forest canopy, they noticed a new phenomenon. A series of glowing streams appeared above the trees, forming arcs of light that seemed to trace the paths they had taken. The patterns shimmered and shifted as they watched, creating a visual record of their journey. "The forest is showing us everything we've done," Nayeli said softly. "It remembers, it responds, and it communicates. It wants us to see that we are part of its rhythm and patterns." Elias felt a profound sense of wonder. Humanity had always found ways to adapt, cooperate, and learn. And now, in this forest, those abilities were being mirrored by the intelligence of a completely different form of life. The forest was patient, cooperative, and aware, and humans had found a way to understand and interact with it. They spent the rest of the day observing, learning, and communicating with the forest. Elias felt a deep sense of pride and connection. Humans were capable of so much curiosity, ingenuity, respect, and cooperation. And in the quiet, glowing heart of the forest, those qualities were recognized, mirrored, and amplified. As evening fell, the forest pulsed gently, the small creatures hovering in rhythmic patterns, and the glowing plants shifting softly. Elias and Nayeli settled near the pond, reflecting on the day's discoveries. This forest, it's teaching us something important, Elias said. Humans have always survived by learning, adapting, and cooperating. That's how we thrive. And now, even in this alien environment, those qualities guide us again. Nayeli nodded. Yes, and it's showing us that intelligence comes in many forms. The forest thinks, responds, and teaches. It's not human, but it understands. And it recognizes our understanding in return. They watched the forest as night fell, the glowing lights forming a tapestry of intelligence, awareness, and life. Elias felt a deep connection, not just to the forest, but to the lessons it represented. Humans could rise to any challenge, adapt to the unknown, and cooperate with the world around them. The torn dress from the first day, the glowing moss, and the living intelligence of the forest had all led to this revelation. Humanity's greatest strength was not just survival, but the ability to learn, respect, and cooperate with life, no matter how different it might be. Elias looked at Nayeli and smiled. Tomorrow, we go further. There's more the forest wants to show us. Nayeli's eyes glimmered with quiet excitement. Yes, and we will continue to learn. Together. As the stars began to appear in the night sky, the forest pulsed gently, alive with awareness and intelligence. Elias and Nayeli had discovered not only the forest's secrets, but also a deeper truth about humanity, that curiosity, respect, and cooperation were keys to understanding life, no matter how alien. And with that knowledge, they knew the journey was only beginning. The forest greeted them with a soft glow as dawn broke over the horizon. Tiny motes of light drifted through the mist, reflecting the first rays of the sun. Elias stretched, feeling a sense of calm that had become familiar over the past few days. The forest was alive, aware, and responsive, but now, he felt as though he truly belonged within it, not as an intruder, but as a learner and a witness. Nayeli knelt by the pond, tracing faint patterns in the water with her fingers. The luminescent light rippled outward, forming symbols and arcs that danced across the surface. Elias knelt beside her, observing the forest's communication. Over the past days, he had learned to read some of the patterns, gentle nudges in the moss, subtle pulses in the vines, and shifts in the tiny creatures that guided them. Today feels different, Elias said softly. It's like the forest wants us to understand something bigger. Today feels different. Today feels toxed. Today feels different, Nayeli nodded. Yes, I think we're close to seeing its full message. We've learned patience, observation, and cooperation. But now, it wants us to see how those things connect. They rose and followed a trail of glowing moss that led deeper into the forest. The creatures flitted ahead, their tiny lights forming shapes that guided the pair toward a natural amphitheater of towering trees. At the center, a massive tree stretched skyward, its trunk wide and spiraling, glowing faintly from within. Vines and moss created intricate patterns, pulsing rhythmically like a heartbeat. This tree, Nayeli said, her voice filled with awe, is the core of the forest's intelligence. Everything we've encountered flows from it. It remembers, it adapts, and it teaches. Today, we will understand more of what it wants to show us. Elias approached carefully, feeling the warmth radiating from the tree. When he placed his hand on the trunk, pulses of light traveled upward, spreading through the branches. The creatures around them hovered in synchronized patterns, their movements gentle and precise. Elias realized that the forest was showing him not just patterns, but a story of connection, awareness, and harmony. Look, Nayeli whispered. It's showing how all living things interact. Humans are part of that story. Our curiosity, our respect, our cooperation. These are what allow us to connect with life, no matter how different it is. Elias's mind raced. Humanity had always faced the unknown with intelligence and adaptability. From surviving harsh climates on Earth to exploring distant worlds, humans had thrived by observing, learning, and cooperating. Now, this forest, a living, intelligent ecosystem, was teaching the same lesson in a completely new form. They spent hours in the amphitheater, interacting with the tree and surrounding plants. The forest responded to their gestures, subtle movements, and quiet observation. Every touch, every careful motion, every shared glance between Elias and Nayeli elicited a gentle reaction. The moss glowed brighter, the vines shifted, and the tiny creatures danced in synchronized patterns. "It's like a conversation," Elias said softly. "Not with words, but with understanding. And it's teaching us that intelligence can exist in many forms, not just human or mechanical." "Yes," Nayeli said, her eyes reflecting the forest's light. "And it shows that humans have something unique: curiosity, patience, and the ability to cooperate. That is how we can interact with life that is different from us." As the sun climbed higher, Elias and Nayeli realized the forest was guiding them toward a small pool at the edge of the amphitheater. The water was crystal clear, reflecting the glowing patterns above. They knelt beside it, dipping their hands into the surface. The light beneath the water shifted into new forms, arcs, circles, and spirals that formed a story of harmony and connection. "It's beautiful," Elias whispered. "It's showing that humans can belong here not as conquerors, but as learners. As part of the world's rhythm." Nayeli smiled. "Yes. We have been patient, observant, and respectful. That is why it has revealed this to us. Humanity can thrive when we approach life this way." Elias thought about everything they had discovered. The torn dress patched by the forest's light, the glowing moss, the guiding creatures, and the intelligent trees. All of it had led to this revelation. Humans did not need to dominate or control to succeed. They could observe, adapt, and cooperate. That was humanity's greatest strength. "Do you think we could show others?" Elias asked. "Other colonists? Other humans?" Nayeli nodded. "Yes. But carefully. The forest must always be respected. It teaches those who approach with curiosity, patience, and understanding. That is the lesson we bring back." They spent the remainder of the day exploring the amphitheater, learning new ways to interact with the forest. Every step, every gesture, and every observation strengthened their connection to this living world. They realized that the forest's intelligence was not static. It adapted, remembered, and responded to those who entered its space with respect. By evening, Elias and Nayeli settled beside the pond to rest. The forest glowed softly around them, the creatures hovering in gentle patterns, and the moss pulsing with quiet light. They watched in silence, absorbing the harmony and intelligence surrounding them. Elias broke the quiet. "I've seen many places, and I've faced many challenges. But this is different. This forest is alive in ways I never imagined, and it shows that humans have a place here, not just surviving, but understanding and cooperating with life." Nayeli nodded. "Yes. That is why humans thrive. We adapt, we observe, and we learn. That is our strength. And this forest has shown us how to apply that strength in a new way." As night fell, the forest pulsed gently, the glowing patterns forming arcs across the trees and moss. Elias and Nayeli lay back on the soft grass, looking up at the stars. The creatures danced around them, tiny lights reflecting the rhythm of the forest. Elias smiled. "Tomorrow, we will return to the colony. But we carry more than discoveries. We carry lessons. Lessons about respect, patience, and human ingenuity." Nayeli nodded. "Yes. And we carry proof that humans can connect with life in ways that are thoughtful and harmonious. That is our legacy." Before leaving, they walked one last time through the amphitheater. Elias touched the central tree, feeling the pulses of light run through his hand, and whispered a silent promise to respect, observe, and learn wherever humans went. Nayeli followed, placing her hand beside his, sharing the same promise. When they finally stepped out of the forest and back onto the riverbank, the sun had risen fully, painting the plains in warm gold. The forest behind them pulsed gently, a quiet acknowledgement of their respect and understanding. Elias and Nayeli exchanged a glance, knowing they had witnessed something extraordinary. "This journey has changed me," Elias said quietly. "The forest has shown that intelligence is not only in humans or machines, but in life itself. And humans can learn to connect with it." Nayeli smiled. "Yes. And that connection is what makes us strong. Curiosity, patience, respect. Those are what allow humans to thrive, even in places far beyond Earth." As they began their journey back to the colony, Elias felt a deep sense of purpose. The forest had revealed its intelligence, its patterns, and its harmony. Humans had proven themselves capable of understanding and respecting it, and with that understanding, the possibilities were endless. They walked side by side along the river, reflecting on the journey. Every lesson, every discovery, and every interaction reinforced the same truth. Humanity's greatest strength was not in dominance, but in curiosity, intelligence, and cooperation. By the time they reached the outskirts of the colony, the sky was a soft blue, streaked with gold from the rising sun. The forest lay behind them, glowing faintly, alive with patterns and intelligence, silently watching and remembering. Elias and Nayeli looked at each other, knowing their journey had only begun. "We have to share this," Elias said. "Not to take from the forest, but to teach others what we've learned. Humanity can thrive when we observe, respect, and cooperate." Nayeli nodded. "Yes, and we must ensure that the forest is always respected. That is the true lesson. Humans rise, not by force, but by understanding and harmony." As they entered the colony, Elias felt hope. The frontier was full of challenges, unknown worlds, and strange life forms. But humanity had shown time and again that it could adapt, learn, and thrive. The forest had confirmed it. Humans had the intelligence, patience, and cooperation needed to face any mystery, any challenge, and any new life. And somewhere in that glowing forest, the intelligence they had connected with pulsed softly, acknowledging their understanding, their respect, and their promise. It was a quiet, eternal partnership between humans and the living world, a testament to curiosity, adaptability, and the endless possibilities of human ingenuity. Elias looked at Nayeli one last time. "We've learned much, and we will continue to learn. Humanity will always rise to the challenge, no matter how strange, new, or intelligent the world may be." Nayeli smiled, her eyes reflecting the morning light. "Yes, and the journey continues. Together." With that, they walked into the colony, carrying not just discoveries, but the knowledge that humans could connect, understand, and thrive wherever life was waiting. The forest behind them remained alive, aware, and patient, a quiet teacher and witness to the resilience of humanity. And in that harmony, both Elias and Nayeli knew the future was bright, because humans had the ability not just to survive, but to understand, respect, and thrive alongside the living universe.